Happy Thursday. It's a busy Thursday, too. Oracle goes country. Docker Hub has another security surprise. And AI insecurity, security, I don't know yet. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday to you. Alan Schimmel here at Techstrong or Techstrong Gang. We've got a loaded gang today with people from all over the place. Let me introduce you to who we have. First of all, joining us, I think from a foreign country, perhaps. Canada anyway. It's our resident cyber expert, the one and only Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, good to have you on.
Good to see you, folks.
Are you in Canada now, or?
I'm in Canada, yes, in the studio in Canada, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. Joining us from New York, where we're actually grabbing him before he goes on CNBC or some other chat. Actually, where are you going today, Daniel?
Yeah, I'll be down at the New York Stock Exchange today, doing a number of interviews. It's Fed Day here, so we're going to be talking, Fed and tech. And then I'll be all over the city because it's been a big wave of tech earnings. And of course, I think we'll talk a little bit about one of those big names that isn't reporting this week, but one of the big clouds for sure.
Sure. So that's Daniel Newman, CEO, founder of Futurum Group, joining us on the gang today. As he said, in New York, we're happy to have him. I think also joining us in New York, his native land, hailing from the Bronx, the one and only Mike Brizard, our Chief Content Officer. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good. I'm hiding out in Dobbs Ferry today.
Dobbs Ferry, a little upstate there, as we call it. And then joining me here at our Boca Raton headquarters is our Echo Insights editor, Bonnie Schneider. Bonnie, thanks for joining.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to be here.
All right. So let's kick it off. So as I mentioned in the outset, Oracle's going country. I don't know, does this mean Larry Ellison gets a cowboy hat? But they have, eschewed what has been sort of the normal migration path for tech companies from California to Austin and hopped all the way over to Nashville, which is, look, I love Nashville. It's an up-and-coming tech town as well as a great music town. As Austin's a great music town, too. But Daniel, you're an Austin guy. What do you think?
Well, first of all, it was exciting when Oracle made its move. It has a big campus right near the lake, Lady Bird Lake in Austin in the city. And, one of the interesting things about it was while Oracle did claim the headquarters there, if you talk to most Oracleans, they would tell you that they were still mostly in the Bay Area. Now, I don't know if Larry changed his mind about the kind of sauce he wants on his barbecue or the type of country music he wants to listen to, but the move to me is in many ways city-wise, community-wise is very lateral. It's very similar. Now, having said that, Nashville has something that I believe Austin lacks, and that's its healthcare and its focus on healthcare systems. And of course, it has a very, very well reputed university there at Vanderbilt. And I'm not going to say that UT is not reputed, but there's kind of these elements that if you want to be in a city around a certain subject matter, and Ellison's all in on healthcare, you need to be in a place where that is the central sort of industry in that community. And so I'm sure he's getting some great tax subsidies. I read about some of them, and I'm sure this process is going to take some years. As an Austonian, of course, we like to brag about having Oracle in our town, but they'll still be there. The headquarters they built will still be there. People will still be there, but they'll be naming the new domicile in Nashville because healthcare is the center of the Oracle universe. At least that's how Ellison is describing it.
Really? So I wasn't aware of that strong. I mean, I know they had a strong healthcare focus. I didn't realize it was the center of it. But, look, a couple of things come to my mind. So first of all, we've been hearing for so long that Austin's sort of the new Silicon Valley, right? All of the California folks, not all, but many of the California companies kind of migrating into Austin, and it's a business friendly. And look, UT, the business school there's I forget the name of the business school. My son was accepted to it. Excuse me? McCombs, right? That's a fantastic business school. UT is one of the bigger universities. I was just reading an article the other day about the new Ivies, and they had 10 public Ivies that they say are on par with, the private traditional Ivy League schools. So, and Vanderbilt, look, Vanderbilt's obviously one of those kind of Ivy League analog schools. But I mean, is this sort of a one-off deal? Tennessee sort of dropped its drawers on the subsidies and everything to make it worthwhile for Oracle? Or do you think this is the next migration wave where we may even, go directly from California to Tennessee?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think Tennessee has some favorable tax scenarios for employees. People want to live there. It does have great music, and the barbecue's okay. It's not Austin, but I know everybody out there is at least, someone in North Carolina and Kansas City that's booing all of us. But the point is that, when it comes to the environment, Nashville is a growing community. Its infrastructure is growing. One of the things I could tell you as someone that transplanted from Chicago to Austin is there are some elements that are required to be the center of a tech hub. And Austin has some of them, but it lacks some of them. And that's going to be on Texas to figure it out. And I mentioned the school. Yes, UT is good, but it doesn't have a Stanford. It just doesn't. Yeah. And so that's different. And then, of course, it's infrastructure. The education, I'm not talking about higher ed. I'm talking about the K-12. Education for the kids. The school systems have not been developed up to the point where they can attract as much talent and young talent. And the infrastructure like roads and stuff, it's very difficult to get around Austin. It's overcrowded now. They have not built the west to east of the city. Most of it's north-south to Dell. But the beautiful part of Austin's west of Austin in the hill country, and it's hard to get out there. And so, they need to continue to expand the infrastructure. We brought a lot of people in quick. Tesla came in, and then Oracle came in. And of course, you've got big campuses from companies like AMD. Intel is out there. Qualcomm has offices. Apple has a big office. IBM has a huge presence. So there's a lot of tech there. This isn't the beginning or the end. The Nashville question, and I know I'm dragging a bit here. So the Nashville question, it really is probably more of a one-off related to what Ellison's talking about. When they bought Cerner for $28 billion to revolutionize the electronic health records business, it really was about changing healthcare. This was a big play for its OCI business, winning more workloads in its cloud. And if it could be the dominant cloud provider to healthcare, one of the largest verticals that is going to need to migrate from prem to cloud, Oracle has a huge chance to become a much bigger cloud provider. Remember, they're the fourth provider by revenue right now. Yeah. If they want to become bigger, they need to really think about how to specialize and drive that high demand to the OCI cloud versus the other offerings that are out there. And specializing is going to be important. You're going to see it with Google. You're going to see it with Oracle, because to keep up with Azure and AWS at that more general level, they're going to need to have specialty. Even IBM's done it with like financial services. Yeah. They've got to zero in on something. Oracle's zeroing in on health, and health is very big in Nashville, Tennessee.
To what degree do you think it really matters where the company is? Because, to your earlier point, most of the employees for Oracle are global. There are large sections in California, Texas, but they're everywhere. And I think most companies today are kind of highly distributed. So are we really looking at, Oracle is in Nashville, but they're basically, 10 offices for CEOs and execs that come by once in a blue moon?
Well, the CEO didn't really move to Texas. He hasn't been in Austin. So, what I'd say is he has a plan of the kind of community. If you read the outlay of what they're intending to do, they're planning to build kind of this park building community with clinics and test areas where all the technology can be leveraged in healthcare in real time. I do think to some extent, it's a tax play. To some extent, it is being closer to the healthcare community play. I think to some extent, it's Larry determining his politics and taking his money where he thinks it will be best appreciated. And of course, I think Oracle likes to be different. It always has. Yeah. It was in the Valley long before everyone else was, and now everyone else is there, and he sees an opportunity to maybe win talent and win markets elsewhere. And to your point, maybe do it with better economics. The economics of the Bay Area are not great for most companies, and so it works for the talent. But if you don't need the talent to, I think both of your points, doing it elsewhere can make a lot of sense. So I wouldn't bet against Oracle here. I think it's really being more deterministic in its plans to run with healthcare. And it's doing it's a move that seems pretty lateral to me, Nashville from Austin. But for Larry and for Oracle, I guarantee you the books, the numbers have been well reviewed, and it makes sense for their business.
It is getting a reputation, Nashville, for being healthcare, health tech. There's 900 startups in tech and healthcare in Nashville and more.
Nashville alone, yeah.
So it's definitely a hub for that if that's their aim, which sounds like it is.
I don't think it's a knock on Oracle at all or anything. I think this is a plus for Nashville. Look, I'll tell you here in Florida, when people I speak to who are disenchanted because Florida is a crazy place to live now, given the economics and insurance and the political pushes and pulls, where do most people I speak to go to move? They're moving to Tennessee, to the Nashville area and the suburbs around Nashville. It's got a great rep. It's a good place. As Daniel mentioned, the K-12 school system there is supposedly at least better than it is here. I'm assuming maybe in Austin too. Look, good on Nashville, good on Tennessee, good for them, good on
gotten
Oracle.
expensive. It's gotten expensive, just like Austin has.
Well,
But
that's the problem with all the, it's that boom cycle thing, right? Everybody goes there because it's cheap, and then it's not cheap no more. And,
Right.
Florida's a great example of it as well.
I hear that Californians are moving back, Alan, from Austin at least. So
Well,
we're very
and
sad about
I have heard
That's
some of
what it
that myself from folks. Yep.
So, hey, you got to live there, Daniel. I'm not going to put your address out there so we have protesters or anything. We have enough protests in this country. But Austin's still a great town. And to all my friends in Austin out there, I got you. I don't care what he says.
All right.
The
Well,
barbecue's still the best, Blacks.
Texas and Nashville have been fighting it out for country music for decades. So now it's
Right,
just
and that's true, too. They're both great music towns for, if you're into music.
I think Nashville gets the cake there.
Yeah, well,
Just
for
we get the
country,
barbecue. We get the barbecue.
I'll give
They
you
get the
barbecue
music.
and Tex-Mex.
Yeah, we've got great Tex-Mex.
Yeah. But anyway, and look, UT's in the SEC now. They'll be playing Tennessee all the time. So it'll make for good football. I think we're going to call a break here on our Oracle news. Daniel, I know you have to run down to the stock exchange. Thanks for stopping by today. We hope to see you back here soon on the gang, and we'll be in touch. Daniel Newman, CEO, founder, Futurum Group here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with some security surprises on Docker Hub. Stay tuned. All right, we're back here on Techstrong Gang. Having Daniel Newman from Futurum Group on is great. He brings a lot of insights to it. But, as part of our Futurum Techstrong hookup, we're going to see more and more of the Futurum analyst community on Techstrong Gang as well as Techstrong TV. And we think it adds a lot of value to you and to what you are wanting to know about. So that's something to look forward to going on. For now, though, let's jump over to this news on a little security surprise here with Docker Hub. I'm going to ask Mike Bizarre if you want to kick that one off. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, it turns out that JFrog did some work with Docker, and I think JFrog did most of the work, but they discovered that all this content, and we're not talking about the code, but actual content that sits on Docker Hub has been loaded up with links to phishing sites and malware, and the ebooks have been compromised, and all the people who've been kind of using that as a quote-unquote marketing vehicle for sharing content, I guess nobody was watching the store because everybody started on the cyber criminal side, started uploading millions of these pages and these repositories that are basically codeless, and they're just a bunch of content with links that people are being asked to click on. And I guess they trusted that. And I have no idea, Chris, but how many folks do you think might actually have been involved? But every Docker developer I know plays around on that hub and clicks on just about everything.
Yeah, the short answer is sort of all of them, right? And I'm thinking about what comments you and Daniel made about the Oracle move to Nashville. And it's, I'm in the midst of a move. I'm unpacking all sorts of old things. My Apple IIc is running upstairs, right? And when we think about Silicon Valley, it was apples, literally apples before that. I mean, we're old enough. When we were kids, Silicon Valley wasn't Silicon Valley. And then it was, and then Austin. When I remember these same conversations you guys just had about Nashville, about Austin. Austin, really? Yeah, and now it's Nashville. And these things just evolve, right? And it's, as we try to do, if we're reasonable folks, we're trying to filter our biases out. And I am so deep in supply chain security and companies like JFrog and so forth, and issues exactly like this, that it's easy to think that I'm seeing it because I'm focusing on it. But no, this is where we are right now, right? It's just like, the buildup in the tech hubs like Silicon Valley and Austin and so forth will lead to moving. And since we're building an electronic network, that leads to your point, distributed companies, where are the employees anyway, do the physicalities matter? And in this case, it leads to all these supply chain things. If I'm building repositories, as we have been doing for decades, for lots of good reasons, and this is a good example, that's also a vector. And if we haven't gotten around to looking at that issue from a security perspective, but we have been working through the other issues, we're raising the cost of real estate in exploits that you can read about, the historical exploits from 5 years or more ago. Now we're getting to the supply chain exploits. You could have been dumping things into places like this for decades, but mostly the adversaries were dumping things into other places. Last couple of years, as always, the adversaries are ahead of us, and they've been doing things like XZ and like this, and we should expect to find this around. If I was spending my time being a nefarious actor, this is the area that I've been exploiting right now. Supply chain is rife.
So first of all, this isn't the first Docker Hub security kind of embarrassment, right? There were previously a lot of like the crypto mining folks had put up fraudulent Docker containers, a Docker Hub that, they were like one letter off of a very well-known used container. So if you're using, an image in Docker Hub that was called XYZ, they would put up something called XYZZ. And a lot of people just carelessly would click on XYZZ instead of XYZ. But I don't mean to just nail Docker and Docker Hub here for this. This is a prevalent problem, as Chris says, across all of our repos. And when we build Frankenstein-like software by stitching together a lot of components from a bunch of different repos, right? And we call it software supply chain security now, right? But that's really what it is we're stitching together software from components in all of these repos. I don't understand why someone smart out there, and maybe I should stop the Techstrong thing and go do my next startup. I want repo firewalls. I want something that sits in front of your infrastructure or at the end gateway to that repo and doesn't let anything out unless it's been vetted and checked, right? And I think if we put that onus on the repo holders, and you know what? JFrog has one called Artifactory. And they have X-Ray that supposedly checks it. And our friends at Sonatype with the Maven and their repos and GitHub, all of these repos need to have repo firewalls at the gateway, making sure that what you're downloading, if you're downloading an old version of something, warning you, this is an old version, do it at your own risk. If it's not what it purports to be, we have enough, God knows we have enough AI and all this stuff to figure that out too. someone, I mean, either make a business around it or force the repo owners, operators to make a business around it.
People were
I
clicking
guess
on
that's where I have
us
two
too.
opinions on that. One, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying
Buddy?
that people were clicking on it because it would say, here's a free version of a video game. It wasn't like we were saying somewhere by mistake. A lot of it was intentional and
Fishing.
yeah, fishing. And I believe what they found that it's been going on for years. It wasn't like it was something they just noticed. It was there for a long time.
Chris?
Yeah. I mean, I feel sometimes like I sound like I'm making excuses for the problems, but a lot of them seem unavoidable. So Alan, I think there probably are business opportunities to do the kind of things you're talking about right now, and maybe that's the right thing. And I think people will certainly try that, and more power on them. Honestly, I think structurally the answer is different, but maybe we're not close enough to that to really stitch these things together. But yeah, this is where we are right now. And if Docker Hub is an example, if a repo or whoever's go back to their origin, and there's probably somebody else who's trying to do the same thing. If one of them had added all the security that we would like to have on these things, they may have not have become the default repo in the first place, because they would have been slower or more expensive. So this Darwinian, you can't put the security in place unless your competitors are putting it in place until the time is right that everybody has to do it.
If you fall victim to this, I'm kind of going to blame the victim here, but the developers, it's kind of like, let me get this straight. If I told you were going to go to a foreign country where malaria is prevalent, and then you decided to go to a public pool and swim in it with everybody else, bad things are going to happen. And people got to be more careful about what they're doing and thinking about it. I get that Docker Hub has a responsibility here, but it's still a public repository. And these days, anything that is a public anything, you need to be really careful about using it. I'm not saying you should be incredibly paranoid, but you need to be careful and think it through. It seems like a lot of people are not. They're just kind of like, woo, there's a thing here, I'll just click on it, and not realizing they have a responsibility to the organizations they work for to not click on stupid stuff.
So personal responsibility, a new political position by Mike Bizarre out here. Look, I don't think, even if it's a quote unquote a public repository, I think the repository owners still have some responsibility to take the junk out of there. You know what? You can knock Apple all you want, but when I go to the Apple store, I'm assuming that those apps have been vetted, that I'm not downloading malware. And when I do, all hell breaks loose, right? Everybody comes down. Same thing for the Google Play Store, though it's probably a little bit more open than the Apple Store. We need to, look, software is inherently built via repos today, via components downloaded from repos. We have got to do something about cleaning the sewers there.
I think there's an existential choice people need to make. For all I say about the passage of time, right now, if you are, to your point, if you're responsible for repo like that and you're not thinking about this, and I would think dollars and cents and days and weeks, if you don't have the time and the resources to address this, you're probably going to get wiped out. You're not going to be the one around in a year or two. And same thing on the developers, right? I get it. A year, 2, 3, 5 years ago, there's no way you could competitively write every line of code yourself. We need to pull it in. However, we're here now. If you aren't right now thinking about what this means, how do I put it in place in a realistic time frame and a realistic cost of dollars and resources, you're not going to be the one around in a couple of years either.
I don't disagree. I think that's true too. So there is a little bit of buyer beware or downloader beware. I just, as I said right from the beginning, guys, I don't understand. This is a business problem that needs to be solved. Why hasn't some smart entrepreneurs solved it? I think there's money to be had here. So, look for my new startup soon. The repo wall.
Are you going to be repo man? Is that how that's going to go?
Maybe I will be the repo man. You bet. There's a new sheriff in town cleaning up repos. But, it's just too big a problem. I mean, this latest one is, I don't think it's only one facet of the problem with repos. A lot of it is also just downloading outdated versions of components and stuff. I don't, we need to lock that down a little better too. Then there's other, not just, click schemes like this, but true malware that people download and turns zombie computers for mining and stuff and ransomware. It's too big a problem. We can't just kind of turn the other cheek anymore. This needs to be solved, and it's something that can be solved. It's central to the software supply chain security issue. Anyway, I guess that's going to be the last word on that one. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to be back about more insecurity.
I'm Bonnie Schneider, sustainability contributor to the Techstrong Group. I'm excited to introduce you to a groundbreaking new initiative from Techstrong Research, the Sustainability Pulse Meter. The Pulse Meter offers valuable insights into how environmental responsibility factors into tech purchasing decisions for key players in the industry. Position your company as a leader in the industry and differentiate from your competitors with the Sustainability Pulse Meter, offered exclusively from Techstrong Research.
All right, folks, and we're back, and everybody out there is talking about AI, and a subset of folks are also starting to talk about security in AI. And we recently saw the NSA is calling for folks to follow some best practices for implementing AI. And at the same time, there's the other folks over at NIST. And if you don't know who NIST is, they're part of the Department of Commerce, and they do a lot of work on IT frameworks. But they came out with some guidance about how those frameworks should be built. And our friend Chris here is pretty close to all these guys, and a lot of vendors, of course, are starting to implement those guidelines. So we saw Sysdig do something similar along that line, and I expect there'll be about 100 more of these in the next weeks ahead. But Chris, what is going on here with the U.S. government and security? It seems like they're much more active than ever, but there's a lot of acronyms, and I don't know exactly who does what, and maybe you might want to sort this out a little bit for us.
Yeah, I'll approach this with my traditional Pollyanna optimism. I think it's going quite well, frankly. I spent a lot of time with folks who are older than me, who were the first ones to brief Congress and so on and so forth. In my career, I've spent a lot of time at each stage, the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s, and now in this decade, working with the government at various levels, the U.S. federal government, other federal governments. And I think, I'll try to stay away from politics and maybe just, have to get into ideology, right? I think the U.S. system works really well as compared to like the opposite, some totalitarian, authoritarian, socialist or fascist, whatever, where there's going to be some central committee who's going to tell us how this works. We saw that play on the Cold War, right? Our, chaotic approach of governance and private and public sector just outcompeted, the Soviet model of centralized control. And I think this issue sort of plays out the strengths and weaknesses, but I would say the strengths of this model, where, today, the public-private and private-public working groups that I'm involved with the Department of Homeland Security, particularly the Department of Commerce before that, same groups, are much more mature than they were, say, 20 and 30 years ago, where we're sort of naive. You look at the presidential directive that created the first Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And I finally just recently talked to someone who was part of the conversation that led to that executive order in the late 90s. And is a good example. So some private sector experts working with government sector folks saying, we need an Information Sharing and Analysis Center that the private sector runs. So it gets written, and what happens is almost that, except 6 or 12 or maybe 100, depends how you count, ISACs were developed. And the public-private working groups that I'm involved with now, I think, are on average leveraging this model. The private sector has all the expertise, but we don't have the authority, and we don't always have the focus because we have to stay in business. The public sector has a lot of scope and responsibilities, but they don't have the expertise and flexibility. And NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, is, someone will no doubt correct me in the comments, sort of a Cold War era institute, a National Federal Institute of Standards and Technology to come up with frameworks that are by and large generated by conversations with the private sector. Bringing a bunch of folks like you and I into a room and saying, all right, we're going to publish under the auspices of the government the general consensus of what the industry thinks right now. So fast forward all the way to this particular era, AI regulation. I'm confused, you're confused, and our peers are among the world's leading experts on this topic, and none of us can say exactly what the rules should be. So I think there's a good time for the public sector to step in with something, let them be wrong let us be wrong in their name, right? And we'll work through that, and we'll find the flaws, and we'll iterate back to what the right rules are. Because I don't know, do you know what the right rules for regulating AI are today?
But I'm not so sure the public sector does either. I think that's something
not a clue.
Need to develop. Sorry. Here's where I see it, Chris. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help, right? The 8 scariest words in the English language. To me, the federal government does, the problem is it's a security cha-cha. It's one step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yes, NIST is working on these things. At the same time, NIST budget got cut in this era of budget cuts. And they killed the National Vulnerability, or they're not funding the National Vulnerability Database, I believe, project going forward.
But the NVD, and again, the private sector has almost all the expertise. And you and I know fantastic, world-leading experts who are government employees, but the vast majority are from the private sector. And the NVD, the National Vulnerability Database, is a perfect example, because while I would generally agree that it should have been created, somebody had to do it. Is that the answer? Is it really workable going forward? Is it the best use of funds? That's a heck of a question.
Yeah.
And I would entertain the answer is no. But it kind of comes back to the issue of repositories we were talking about earlier. I think the future of technology and governance of technology looks different than the past. It's less about firewalls, it's less about having a repo wall. And it's more about all of us agreeing on efficient systems where we don't have to, build a wall everywhere.
Right. Let me ask you this. In history, everybody who ever fought the next war using the last war's tactics and techniques got whooped for the first 2 years until they figured out that there was a different set of rules being applied and it was a different game. So are we in danger here of, reaching back to some Cold War era strategy and trying to use it to fight, essentially a two-front war against nation states on one side and a bunch of digital pirate criminals on the other?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. And I would say in every, domain, whether it's literally the military, I love aircraft carriers. They're really cool. They're of my era. I don't know that, 100, they have these wonderful oil tanker based, expeditionary based ships. And there's like 5 or 10 of them out there. I love those things. They build them in a couple of years. They don't cost that much. Maybe we span the ocean with those. In this whole cybersecurity realm, I think centralized controls and even centralized, rules and standards are quite often the wrong approach. You assume you're going to lose some repos. There shouldn't be one of anything. We should have redundancy, and we should have organic redundancy. Walling off, trying to make this one thing perfectly secure, as opposed to assuming, whether through incompetence, nefarious entropy, whatever, that things will go down. How do I keep the entire system working? Is more the battleground, the cyber and physical battleground of the future.
For all the years that I've been in security, before it was fancy and got called cyber, the biggest weakness was the guy behind, or the gal, or the person behind the keyboard. The human issue. They're the ones who click on the fish. They're the ones who, don't think things through. I don't think that changes. I don't think human nature changes. Who was it? Ira Weekler. His book is You Can Cure Stupid, right? I'm not so sure you can cure stupid. Not that people are necessarily stupid, but we make stupid mistakes. And that's what plagues us. I still think that's probably one of our biggest the soft white underbelly plaguing, security. I don't know how you legislate around that, policy make around it, or, at the end of the day, you got to take that as a given, and all your planning has to start from that. Chris, I'm going to give you the last word on it, and then we're going to wrap up this version of the gang.
I just, I'll reemphasize, my optimistic proof that we're on this call now. The lights are on. The internet's actually working. Our financial system's working, right? So for all the mistakes, and we can look back, and there's a lot of fun to do. It's like, that was bad. That was a terrible idea. We keep error checking in the right time and the right speed. So I'm a systems person. I think our systems, our general open systems that we have around all this, are generally right. And when we come up with terrible ideas, like having a single national vulnerability database as opposed to having that information distributed and redundant, we'll find out and fix it just in time.
Excellent. All right. Chris, Mike Vizard, Bonnie Schneider, and Daniel Newman, who was on earlier. Thank you all for being on Techstrong Gang today. Thank you all for watching Techstrong Gang. No fresh Techstrong Gang tomorrow. We will be back Monday. Actually, we will be live at RSA conference next Monday. We're also going to be at ServiceNow next week. So lots of good stuff coming next week here on Techstrong TV. Stay tuned for the rest of Techstrong TV scheduled today. Until then, I'm Alan Schimmel. We're out.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.